First of all, I want to thank you all for being here today. I'm Andrea from Standard Imaging. We're going to talk about the QA StereoChecker device and software, which was originally designed for filmless QA, mainly on the CyberKnife machine, and we're starting to expand that, so we'll get to show you a little bit of that today. Before we get started, I just wanted to introduce you to some of the colleagues from Standard Imaging. And even in these weird days of working from home and making things work as best we can, we still ask ourselves often, why is it we come to work every day? And the basic answer of that is we realize how special our colleagues are and our family are, and what if they, in fact, were struck with cancer? We want to be your partner in making sure that anyone who gets cancer gets the best possible treatment. And we know a big part of that is the quality assurance done by medical physicists, I should say. So we're here to be your partner in doing precision QA. And thank you again very much for joining us today. A little bit of housekeeping to get things started. So today's webinar is being recorded for future use. If you do have any questions during the webinar, please write them into the little dialog box and I will address those at the end. A little bit about Standard Imaging. We are just over 30 years old. We're based in Middleton, which is a suburb of Madison, Wisconsin. And while we may have had humble beginnings of our well chamber and electrometer for brachytherapy, we have certainly expanded over the last 30 years to a situation where today we have a solution for any of your medical physics QA needs. We have quite the expansive product line these days. And just a comment about myself, this is my 15th year with Standard Imaging, so I've been around for half its entire life. A little weird, to be honest. I never thought I'd be anywhere that long. I've spent nearly all of that time in our sales department, but it's just over 7 months ago I moved to product management, and QA StereoChecker is one of the products within my portfolio. So what is QA StereoChecker? It's this device here set up on the table. It is basically a portable EPID panel. It's an amorphous silicon detector, which has enormous value in the QA realm. First of all, it is fast and consistent setup. So what does that mean, consistent setup? Setup one and done. You can do a variety of QA tasks once the device is in place on the table. We use the CyberKnife target localization system with embedded fiducials to line things up. You do not have to manually manipulate the robot. You don't have to attach anything to its collimator. Tests are performed in clinical mode, which I think is hugely valuable to the physics community. It's high resolution and high speed. So high resolution, basically it's 1,000,000 pixels. That's 200 micron resolution. It is designed by physicists, clinical physicists, with therapists and physicists in mind, which keep it portable and compact. So some people ask, why do you even go into this area of QA? And really, again, because we work with clinical physicists to launch this product, look at what is recommended: film, 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 and more film, which we know the industry is doing its hardest to move away from. Even though it is an excellent tool, we all know that people have a time crunch every day in every way. So anything and everything we can do to minimize that while improving the quality and being able to quantify data is super important to physicists. It was also a question of, well, CyberKnife is a stereotactic device, and while it takes so long to do the iris QA that people do it on a monthly or quarterly basis, really when you're talking stereotactic, wouldn't you rather have quantitative data that you can analyze and make sure that you're starting your day ready to treat patients in the best possible manner? Same type of thing with the garden fence. It's recommended only monthly. The daily test that's recommended is, however, only a qualitative test. So couldn't we move this monthly test to be a quantitative one and easy enough so that a person can do it on a daily basis? One of the things I'd also like to say is I encourage all users and customers when they're evaluating products that they think not just about the purchase price, but also the cost of ownership. Who is doing the QA with this device? What consumables may be required? And how much does that really cost us over time? And you'll see that, by having a therapist join in and do the monthly QA and using the one-time purchase price, you are good to go for a lot less money than you will with other methods over time. Time is money these days, we know it. We're also trying to limit the number of people in hospitals and clinics these days. So if a physicist doesn't need to be on site to do this daily QA, that's a real help. And again, we just really want to be conscientious that time is money, and that's important to you all. So quicker testing means you have your machine available more, which hopefully means greater patient access. Your quicker testing also lets you know more quickly if a repair is needed and get that scheduled out of non-clinical hours. Again, so that increases your uptime, which increases your patient access. It's more convenient this way. You'll have better patient surveys as we move, especially in the United States, to the alternative payment model. It always has been about patient outcomes, but you get to focus on what matters, take care of what urgently needs to be done. It's not just QA for QA's sake, but making sure that the QA is done well in order to make sure your treatments are going well. So I'm going to do a little bit of a comparison between the current method as recommended or supplied by Accuray versus what StereoChecker can do for you. And then we'll go into the software and give you a quick overview of that as well. So the current method for Iris QA is to set up a jig, align your film, deliver your beams, and scan and analyze. This is very time consuming, which is why people do it on a less frequent basis than daily. But with StereoChecker, because you set up the device once, so you have your consistent setup, we have that incredible resolution of the panel. You can align, deliver, and have automatic batch analysis of all your clinically relevant irises. So again, you're checking for your flatness, field width, and penumbra, and it's a one-click analysis and reporting. So another Accuray recommended test is what they call AQA. That's of course trademarked by Accuray. So we call our test the Panda Test. It is the positioning and delivery system analysis test. It is an analogous test to the AQA test. The current version, of course, you're using film again with this little cube phantom that they supply. Again, it's somewhat time consuming. It's not done in a clinical mode. It's done in service mode. Why does that matter? There is not 100% accurate correlation necessarily between what I've done in service mode equals what's going to happen in clinical mode, or vice versa. So it's important to consider being able to do your QA in clinical mode. So again, this is how you do it with the StereoChecker's already set up. The QA plan has already been created. That's one of the things I wanted to just mention quickly. When we quote and people purchase the device, it's a question of the device itself as well as on-site setup and training. We do that with you to ensure all the QA plans are created, that you get practice runs with the device, everything is working to your satisfaction, and you have a really good understanding. That shortens that learning curve incredibly so that you're ready to go with the high quality quantitative QA that you can get from the device. So the garden fence test, again, this is one that requires an attachment to the collimator. It's in non-clinical mode, and it actually takes two software to get the results and analyze the results. That, of course, is an inefficiency you'd like to eliminate. So again, your setup is already done, your beam delivery once you've changed over to your MLC head, and we do image analysis. So it's done very quickly, and you're detecting down to 0.2 millimeter positioning accuracy of your MLCs. And again, just to remind you, even though a garden fence test is considered a monthly QA test, it's very easy with QA StereoChecker to make that a daily test and have your quantitative position results. So picket fence test that's the daily recommended qualitative test only from Accuray that again requires a device attached to the MLC head. We do allow you to acquire a picket fence test, but since it's considered a qualitative test by Accuray, we do not really quantify this in any way, shape, or form. We capture the image and allow you to review it as well. So like I mentioned, this was designed with CyberKnife in mind, but we're starting to add LINAC capability to it, and that is in our monthly workspace. This is the space where you can do an individual iris, fixed cone, or MLC field, and you can do conventional LINAC field, and the metrics we're measuring are flatness, symmetry, field width, and penumbra again. Data can be exported and reported, of course. So now we're going to go over to the software. One thing I'd like to point out is in the presentation so far, everything we've looked at is version 1.4. What I'm actually going to show you today is version 2.0. Why is it working this way? Well, the officially released version right now is version 1.4. So if we were to ship you a QA StereoChecker in the next couple of months, you would be getting version 1.4. However, the device does come with 12-month maintenance, which includes any software updates that get released during that time. And version 2.0 is entering what we call our test phase, which means code is complete. We're now debugging and beta testing the software, about to start beta testing the software, which means that within that 12 months, you're certainly going to get it. Don't have a date for you, but you're certainly going to be getting 2.0. And we always like to look towards the future. So I'm going to go out of here and go over to, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I do have to go over here, but we're going to go over here. So it's timed out on me, which is normal. It is a web-based application now versus local, hard install, if you will. You'll see that there's a very different look and feel to what you saw in my PowerPoint. Up here in the taskbar, we really work left to right from the most common things you're going to do to the least common things you're going to do. So of course, daily QA, reviewing it and trending it is going to be most important on a daily basis. However, as a physicist just getting the device, we're going to start over here in settings because that's what you would care about when you first get started. The other thing I'm going to show you over here is we got this nice little button. I like the light brightness of a white screen, but a lot of people tell us in the darkened work areas that they have that this is much easier on the eyes. So you do have 2 different views to choose from. So we make it very simple. On the left, you're always going to have your menu, if you will, and results or work area to the right. So you have your clinics, machines, users, panel, preferences. In the clinic, very simple, put in your name, add your logo if you'd like. This will determine whether you have a logo on your report or not. Machines, we keep it simple as well. If you're setting up a CyberKnife machine, as soon as you've chosen CyberKnife, it's going to determine the energy, the SAD. You just have to decide which of the treatment mode you have, MLC, iris, fixed cone. It's also going to default to the Accuray tests. The only one, you'll notice here that this one is grayed out. It's inactivated. I did that manually. Normally it would be green. But since it's a qualitative test, I as a physicist have gone, I'd rather do my garden test every day. Here's where you choose what will appear in your daily QA routine menu. And in the monthly tests, again, this would be everything that would show up on your menu. You could undo anything inactivate anything, I guess I should say, from here. The other thing that you can do from here is when you click on a specific test, you get to see what the baseline values are. For CyberKnife, it's going to default to the Accuray tolerances, but these are user editable if you have the right user rights. So speaking of users, right now we have therapists and physicists set up in here. We did create a hierarchy of other roles because you may have junior physicists or you may have a resident that you don't necessarily want them to be able to sign off on QA. So you have an authorized physicist and a physics administrator. There is also an administrator who could add users, inactivate users, depending on things like that. So again, there's associated rights and responsibilities with these different user levels. Panel, there may be some sites that have more than one, so that you have a place to check which one and indicate which panel it is you're actually using. You notice here that it says select calibration file. When you purchase a device, we have performed a calibration on it. We provide that file with the device on for initial setup. But then there may be a time, because we have a million pixels in there, there may come a point where there's enough dead pixels that you'd like to do a recalibration, and we provide you with a method to be able to do that with the panel itself. Preferences right now, we just have the idle time out anywhere. This is user settable. Default is 10 minutes. It can be anywhere from 1 minute to 60 minutes. So let's go over here and look at what daily QA looks like. So each machine gets its ticket with icon, the basic information of the machine ID. We'll go into this one because this is the one I've been playing with a lot. Again, notice you'll have the menu of tests available to run, which have been determined over there in settings. It'll let you know the status of that test. We're going to run just a couple of these because that's not the fun part. And we can view what this information looks like from other areas. So it's going to let you know that your panel is detected, tell you to go ahead and start your test, which means make sure you prepare everything and beam on. And while it's doing that, it's collecting your data. Notice up here you have a little button for Finish QA. That is when you're done with the test for the day and you want to send them up for review. Notice as it's going through the different iris sizes, it's bolding and highlighting the button to let you know the status. You also have some basic editing tools over here. If you wanted to zoom in on that 5mm iris, you might want to zoom in on that a little bit. You also have an opportunity to repeat a test, or as it's running, you can cancel the test. So once it's gone through and done the analysis, you'll notice it's going to light up the buttons with the green, yellow, red, pass, alert, or fail. You're also going to get your tabular information over here that's going to indicate with a symbol as well as color any alerts or deviations that may be found. Then let's run a garden fence test. And then, of course, as you're switching between, it's just going to highlight what's going on. Again, update your table for what the test is. Let's run a garden fence. And again, it's going to let you know your panel is connected, and it's going to go out and gather the data for this. This is why I say this is kind of the more boring part. Just while it's collecting that data, I will mention that the monthly QA is just the next version. It looks exactly like this and functions in the same way with the menu on the left of not run any alerts or errors according to what baseline you may have set up. Notice here with the MLC, we're taking a flood field image at the end. That open field image is part of the test algorithm to make sure that we're giving absolute leaf positions in this test. Again, we're going to color code any errors that are found. Those of you who already own a CyberKnife, you know that there, or an M6, specifically with the MLC, will know that there's 4 different types of tests. 2 of them are based on looking at the overall bank, and then there's 2 tests that are individual leaf-based tests. So we perform all 4 of those tests, and we'll show you in the review and trending what that actually looks like. I'm just going to go here and say we're finished for the day. If you have any notes as the person who acquired the test, things that you may be suspicious about or indications you want to make to the physicist who's going to, or a person who's going to review, whatever you may want to note, you can here, and then just with an easy click, finish your QA. So that moves it over to our review section. And it takes a minute here. Notice that each day is going to get a ticket, so to speak, so that you can, and each machine is going to have its separate set of tickets. And if QA hasn't been signed off in a while, and again, this is my playground, so there's a lot of things I play with, do and don't do, if you will. If there's enough tests have been run that you need to scroll through them, you can do that here. So you get a very quick summary. The nice thing about this being a web application is that anywhere that we have underlined, underscored something, that means this is a point where you can hop in and take a look. So if I want to hop in and take a look at my garden fence, notice I get the information, tabular information over here, and I get a nice schematic that is showing me my X1 and X2 banks and where those alerts or errors may have occurred. If I hover over the button for that individual leaf, you get your expected current and your deviations for each of those. So that is very helpful. The other thing I wanted to go, and you have a back button. And then we're going to go, we can just take a look at, oh, what was that iris that we just took a look at? You can hop back into that before somebody might want to sign off on it. It's going to take it a minute to go back. And again, from there, you can look at any of the different iris sizes and get the information. Look at the current baseline image or your profile information. Up at the top, it gives you the overall average, but you can scroll through to get any type of going in the radius, if you will, or going around the different angles of the iris and get information from each of those points. So that's how you can, oh, another thing to mention about review, you do have these little squares up here. Say everything passed for a day, you want to just, I don't need to look at anything because everything passed, we're good to go. You can do a batch review in that way. I'm not going to do that now because I like to keep my data. So the other thing that's, of course, extremely important, and this is new to 2.0, is being able to actually trend within the software. You get a nice summary again. You can click, these are underscored, so this is where you click to go in and get further information. I'll go into the MLC one because that's the most complex. So again, like I said, there are 4 tests, 2 of which are based on individual banks, 2 of which are based on individual leaves. So we trend the banks and we also trend individual leaves. So you get a summary, a table for the dates and the leaf pairs. It just lets you know whether there's something you need to check on. You can either click into a specific, a specific date to go back and actually see that day's data, or you can go and look at an individual leaf. And it's going to provide you with trending for that leaf pair for X1 and X2. And again, any data that you may want to be able to go back and look at, and it's going to give you that schematic and that day's image. So that is information I wanted to share because that's new. One of the other things that's not necessarily new, but a whole heck of a lot easier to get to and do are both the monthly and manual QA. Manual QA, I'm just going to go in here. Manual QA is an opportunity for you to do something offline, sort of off-label, I guess I should say. Any type of image that you might want to capture with this device by giving a few parameters, and then that image is not analyzed in any way because, of course, this is this one-off image that I'm taking. We haven't created any baseline against it, but you can export it via DICOM. So you can indicate if there's something to composite, say it's a Varian MLC position test, picket fence test, you might want to say how many segments are actually being composited. We're just going to do one here. We're just going to start the test. And it's going to take my one. Here's where you have the information to say, okay, how did I define my field? What was my field size? For example, what energy did I do it at? What was my dose? My dose was what, maybe 200, and my MU rate 600, hopefully that's right. Down here, you have an export name, which is going to be based on the information you've plugged in here, but it is also editable if there's something else or however you want to name it, and it's export as a DICOM file in case you want to review it in something like image J. So that is my quick and dirty overview of the software. One other thing to mention, I'm logged in here as a physicist. As a therapist, they're not going to be doing the monthly and manual QA, therefore those are grayed out for them. They don't have access to that. They will be performing daily QA. So that is what I wanted to show you about the software in this webinar today. We'll go back to the PowerPoint just for a quick minute. And just wanted to mention, take the opportunity while the QA StereoChecker is the latest and greatest we offer for CyberKnife QA. We do provide a full kit and have done so in collaboration with Accuray for a number of years. Some of you may be familiar with our SDVP, Stereotactic Dose Verification Phantom. You may not be as familiar with our heterogeneity slabs, which have embedded fiducials, again, for that nonlinear, non-coplanar isocentric volume. We've also made a new chamber plug insert, which has embedded gold fiducials so that you have more fiducial marks in those much smaller field sizes. We've also added what we call our top hat and our cradle, which basically lifts up the SDVP off the table in case you're doing any posterior lesion QA. It won't set your robot on a collision course with the couch. And the top has some fiducials again for that treatment localization using fiducials. There are two KV imagers with the CyberKnife systems, and I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, know. We do have a particular stand to set our QC KV Phantom in order to set it at the proper 45-degree angle, and then do that analysis, quantitative analysis on how well those KV imagers are performing within our PIPS Pro software. And then, of course, I just want to point you to the latest and greatest in detectors for stereotactic fields, which would be our X-Rated A26 micropoint chamber, which is the only micropoint ion chamber manufactured to reference class standards, which means you get very predictable response curve with it. And then there's also our W2 or W1 scintillator. The W2 scintillator, you have a 1x1 millimeter resolution with a KQ of 1, which makes it absolutely ideal detector for your measurements for those smallest of small fields. So with that, I just want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions. I wanted to say thank you again. If you're like me and will have questions when we're done with this webinar, I wanted to give you my email as well as our sales group's email address in case you have questions after the fact. You can email either of us, or if you want to set up a more in-depth demo of the product and the latest software, you can certainly reach out to our sales team in order to do that. I also just want to take a minute to make a plug for my colleague Hugh Peterson, who will be presenting on our Dose View 3D, and especially hitting some of the new highlights on the smaller updated design to fit in the Halcyon system. So I think that's it on that. So I'm just going to pop back over to the webinar, if I can figure that out. Oh, so technical and yet oh so challenged. See if there's anything in our chat section here. And I'm not seeing anything. I am actually checking. So again, if you have questions after this, let me know. If you have any ideas or thoughts about other topics you want us to bring you via webinar, as we all have a little bit more free time, quote unquote, free time while working from home. We're very happy to do that. We're offering up our platform as a way to get important clinical medical physics topics out to the community please let us know how we can help you in that way. So if still seeing no questions in here, I'm going to say thank you all so very, very much for joining me today. And I wish you the best day ever, and stay safe, stay healthy. Take care.